Auniche. In this video, you'll learn how to say goodbye and the basics of benedictions in Bambara. Ankata. Welcome to episode 4 of Basic Bambara, a series from Ankata, my initiative to create media and resources for speakers and learners of Manding. If you're new here, think about subscribing. Otherwise, if you think this video goes a little bit too fast, there's a link down in the description below. It gives you access to a text, exercises, and audio flashcards to help you out with the video. All right, let's jump into it. In this episode, we're going to cover 3 things about saying goodbye in Bambara. Number 1, a single expression that is the equivalent of saying goodbye. Number 2, benedictions. And number 3, how to respond to benedictions. All right, so there's a few different ways that one can say goodbye in Bambara, but in this video, we're going to cover the one single expression that you need, and that expression is kambe. So using this expression kambe is just as simple as in English. You just say it when it's time to leave. All right, so for instance, you might be talking to a friend and you're going to be like, Aiwa, kambe. And then they are going to respond with the exact same form, which just is kambe. Just like in English when someone says, all right, bye, and the other says, bye. So the expression kambe is actually made up of 3 words. The first 2 words, ka and ang, they get combined in a sort of contraction just to sound like one, kang, but it's actually 2 words, ka, ang, and then the final word is ben. Translating kambe as goodbye is a convenient place to start things, but actually the expression is a little bit more complex. So let's have a look at it. For starters, the expression actually includes an implied word that could be used if you said the expression in its full form, though people don't typically say it. And that word is Allah, which means God. So if we said kambe in its full form, we would actually have an expression that looks like this. Allah ka ambe, or more quickly, Allah kambe. So in this fuller form, Allah ka ambe, we actually have 3 words that are really easy to explain. The first one we already talked about is Allah, which means God. After that, we have the word ang, which means we. It's the 3rd person plural pronoun. And then finally, the verb ben. And that verb means to unite or to come together. The word ka is a grammatical element that's a little bit more complicated. For our purposes, we don't need to know exactly what it means. Let's just think of it as the word that goes along with the verb to create a benediction. So that expression, Allah ka ambe, Allah kambe, you can already imagine what it means. And it's something like, may God unite us or may God bring us together, which is a pretty cool way of saying goodbye. The shorter, truncated form, which is more common, kambe, when you actually just don't need to say God because it's implied, has the same exact meaning. So kambe at its origin is actually a benediction, which is good because that's the second part of our video. So while the easiest way to say goodbye is kambe, the more typical thing that you'll hear and that you'll be expected to do is actually engage in an exchange that involves benedictions. By benediction, I mean expressions that are used to ask God to make things a certain way. For Westerners, it can seem a little bit weird to be using benedictions just as part of everyday goodbyes, but in Bambara and in West Africa in general, it's totally routine and normal thing to do. So there's essentially an infinite number of ways that people can say benedictions, so I'm not going to cover them all in this video. What I'm going to do instead is just teach you what you need to know to be able to recognize them when you hear them, when somebody wishes you health, infinite riches, or a long life. So benedictions in Bambara have 2 forms. We already saw this with kambe, which is actually Allah ka ambe. It's the same thing with benedictions. You'll either have a form that's going to start with Allah ka, and then whatever follows it is going to be the particularities of that benediction. The truncated form, just like with kambe, will drop the word Allah. So for instance, you could have a benediction like Allah ka tlehere chaya. May God make today's peace abundant. Or you could have the truncated form where you simply omit Allah. It's just implied that God is part of the benediction, and you just say, Katlehere chaya. You don't like that benediction? You got a favorite one that you would have preferred me to use as an example? Post it in the comments below. All right, great. So now you know how to recognize benedictions. But what happens if you actually want to use them? You're going to need to know how to respond. That's the next part of this video. So benedictions, just like greetings in Bambara, are a back and forth affair. When somebody says a benediction, you're going to need to respond in a particular way. It's really easy. All you're going to say is the equivalent of amen, which is Amiina. So each and every time that you hear a benediction, and they're normally going to come in a string of a few, you're going to have to respond with Amiina, or its shorter cousin form, Ami. So with benedictions, they can be simple. It could be something like Alaka Bidya, which means may God make today nice, and the person would respond Amiina, Alaka Bidya, Amiina. Or they can be more free-flowing and rapid. You might get something like Alaka tle herechaya, Amiina, Alaka Bidya, Amiina, Alakan deme, Ami, Alaka duaumana, Ami, Ami, Ami. How do you know when you're actually at the end of the goodbye? Well, you're going to have to feel that out. But typically, you could cap all of these benedictions and their aminas just by saying kambe. And the other person will typically say kambe, and you go your separate ways. Iowa. If you like this video, think about clicking on the like button. Otherwise, if you'd like to see more basic Bambara videos, think about becoming a patron of Ankata or throwing something in the tip jar. There's a link down in the description below. Iowa. Ni diarayi. 刚别想我的。